At the end of 2024 and into 2025, the new Six Flags chain has been removing old or expensive to maintain roller coasters left and right. King Nacaw, of course, was the biggest blow by far, but they've also removed some smaller rides like Nighthawk, Green Lantern, La Vibora, potentially Time Warp at Canada's Wonderland, and who knows how long this is going to go on and how long this list is going to grow. Today, I'm going to give my review of one of these removals that, quite frankly, most people are not going to miss: Anaconda at King's Dominion. Anaconda was a multi-looping coaster built by Aerodynamics, being opened in March of 1991. The ride featured 4 inversions and traveled up to 50 miles an hour, and the coaster had a unique setting over the water, and it actually featured a lift hill that was shorter than its drop. Anaconda only stood at 128 feet tall, but the actual drop was 144 feet. Anaconda replaced an old Schwarzkopf shuttle loop called King Cobra, which, ironically, those are a dying breed as well. So Anaconda's layout was kind of similar in a lot of ways to what you would typically see with these aero looping coasters that were being built in the 80s and 90s, but it also featured a few sections that were a little different. Once you ascended the lift hill, you would twist to the right and drop into an underwater tunnel, which is actually what made that drop taller than the actual lift hill. After exiting that tunnel, you would enter a vertical loop, followed immediately by a sidewinder. You would then hit this little tiny hill, which I guess was kind of supposed to be an airtime hill, but it doesn't really do much, before completely slamming to a stop on that mid-course brake run. After very slowly, and I do mean very slowly, coming off that mid-course, you would traverse several twists and turns. I've seen this element or this section referred to as a butterfly figure 8 element. Not sure if that's the official name or something that enthusiasts came up with. After this, you would enter 2 corkscrews back to back, which the first time I rode Anaconda, I really thought we were going to valley on the corkscrews. You lose all of your speed and momentum on the mid-course, so you really crawl through that second half. You would finish your ride by diving under the lift hill and hitting your final brake run. I'll start by saying that it's no secret that Anaconda had a lot of hate within the coaster community, and I can see why. It was definitely on the rough side in a lot of places. I thought the first half overall was pretty smooth, and it was a pretty fun ride. The vertical loop was especially intense with the positive G-forces, and after diving under the water, it was just a really cool experience. Even after the mid-course, the corkscrews weren't really that bad. They were definitely kind of shaky, but not rough and shaky enough where it really hurt. The figure 8 element, I think, was really the roughest part in my opinion, and it was pretty painful. Part of me kind of wonders if the roughness was amplified by how slow you went through the second half. I mean, who knows? If you flew through that mid-course into the second half, maybe the coaster would have been way rougher. Who knows? I have no idea. We'll never know at this point. Overall, I would say the first half was good, and the second half was a combination of painful and kind of boring. In terms of the actual layout, I think Anaconda honestly had one of the better ones for these classic aero loopers. The ride experience deteriorated over time, but on paper, the ride experience really wasn't too bad, and the setting really added a lot to the ride. Having a few elements between the 4 inversions was nice, and having a sidewinder thrown in instead of just vertical loops and corkscrews deviates just a little bit from what you would typically see from these classic arrows. Unfortunately, as time passed, Anaconda became rougher and it just did not age well, and the rougher and older it got, the less popular it became. I also want to say that I really liked the color scheme, albeit the colors were really starting to fade a little bit. I think it had a nice appearance and a nice contrast over the water. Something else that I think hurt Anaconda was the trains. Now don't get me wrong, I like the old aero trains. A lot of people don't like them. I've never had a really big issue with them. The issue comes in with the restraints, especially for old aero loopers like Anaconda, spoiler alert, Steamin' Demon at Great Escape was really bad. But when these old arrows start to age and get rougher, the rougher they get, the more uncomfortable those restraints get. I mean, you've got these big, bulky, over the shoulder restraints that normally aren't too bad, but when you're jackhammering and shaking and you have these rough sections of track, they can really hurt. And for a lot of people, when I rode it, that was one of the biggest complaints. People would come off kind of rubbing their shoulders, talking about how much the restraints dug into them from getting kind of jackhammered into them. So they definitely weren't the most popular among the GP. Before I give my final score, I'll go ahead and address the elephant in the room, which is the unannounced closure of Anaconda at the end of the season. No one knew the coaster was going to be removed until KD fans found some demolition permits for the ride, as well as Berserker. I'm going to keep my thoughts brief by saying, personally, I won't miss Anaconda. It was well past its time, and I hope the park doesn't take too long to replace it, which I don't think they will. That's prime real estate. I mean, it's right on the way to Flight of Fear and I-305, or I guess Pantherian now. However, I don't agree with how the chain is handling these closures. A simple month notice saying, hey, Anaconda, or hey, King Dakar, or hey, X coaster name will be closing on October whatever, is all you really need, but nobody got that. Anaconda wasn't high in my rankings at all, but you know there's someone out there who really loved it and is really sad they didn't get their last rides. It's also really sad to see these old Arrow looping coasters starting to be removed more frequently. Obviously, nothing lasts forever, and we knew this was probably coming at some point, but Arrow is a defunct manufacturer. When these coasters are gone, they're gone. Now, obviously, a lot of these old Arrows will go on a lot longer than others, like Loch Ness Monster got refurbished, Tennessee Tornado at Dollywood's in pretty great shape, but it's still sad to see these Arrow coasters that were a part of history and were revolutionary for their time get the axe. For my final ranking, I give Anaconda a 5 out of 10. It's definitely not the worst coaster, or Arrow for that matter, that I've ridden, but there are just so many better coasters out there, even from Arrow, and Anaconda was just not aging well. I'm glad I got to ride it and experience it back in 2023 so I could give it a fair judgment. And it's too bad that it is gone because I know someone out there is going to miss it. Let us know down in the comments, what did you think of Anaconda, and do you think King's Dominion made the right call by removing it? Consider subscribing to our channel if you want to see more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.